started with a word of prayer. Lord God, we thank you for the opportunity to read and study your word. Help it to inspire us and strengthen our faith as we go through the coming days. Amen. All right. Last week we talked about a lot of things. God provided food for the Israelites. So what happened when they hoarded it?
It got moldy.
Yeah, but there was also these little animals that were running around. Remember, it was manna by day and quail by night. So, but they were instructed to only take what they needed, except on what day?
Saturday.
Saturday, or the day before the Sabbath.
Before the Sabbath, because they weren't allowed to.
Yeah. So anybody who violated that ended up with a mess on their hands. Now, what did Aaron do to Moses to guarantee victory over the Amalekites? Remember, at the end they fought the Amalekites, and Aaron had to do. Moses was up on the hill, and Aaron had to do something.
Moses had to hold up his hands.
Right.
And that way he didn't do.
Because if his staff was in his hands.
Yeah, he had to hold up his hands.
So he had to hold up his hands, because every time the staff fell,
Then they would lose.
then he would be losing. So basically, he held up the hands, and that was from sunrise to sunset, as I recall. So basically, they're on their way now. And I see you brought your map, and you brought your map. So if you look at the map, check out where Mount Sinai is. It's around the bottom right somewhere.
No, my eyes can't see.
It says Mount El Laws, Mount Sinai.
Oh, yeah, I see it. Okay.
You see it?
Yeah, it's on there.
Here's one for her. All right. So basically, today we're going to be talking about what happened once they got to this point. And you can now, considering they want to get all the way up to the top of the page where Jericho is, this seems like a very, very sort of wrong way to go, doesn't it?
Yeah. But didn't you say it's because they didn't want to go through where those...
Yeah, where the Philistines were.
Philistines were.
But there was another reason, and Moses mentioned it several times, especially when he talked to Pharaoh. Why did they go there? Remember, he said,
Worship.
exactly, he said, we are to go into the desert to worship God.
Oh, okay.
If you remember from the movie, with the smoke and everything, Mount Sinai was considered God's holy mountain. And whenever God was there, according to Olivia de Havilland, Yvonne DiCarlo, the reality of it was you'd see the smoke and the lights and everything. So that is where Moses led the people, because God told him that he wanted them to worship there. Even though it's not exactly on the way to where they wanted to end up. So we're going to be talking about that today, about what happened, what started to happen once they got there. First of all, we're going to read the text about where Moses meets Jethro. Who's Jethro?
His father-in-law.
That's his father-in-law. So would someone like to read Exodus 18, 1-12?
Okay, I can do it if there's no names. You know me and the names. Now Jethro, the priest of Midian and father-in-law of Moses, heard of everything God had done for Moses and for his people. I'm having a hard time reading. People of Israel, and how the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt. After Moses had sent away his wife Zipporah, his father-in-law Jethro received her and her 2 sons. One son was named Gershom, for Moses said, I have become an alien in a foreign land, and the other was named Eliezer, for he said, my father's God was my helper. He saved me from the sword of Pharaoh. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, together with Moses' sons and wife, came to him in the desert, where he was camped near the mountain of God. Jethro has sent word to him, I, your father-in-law, Jethro, am coming to you with your wife and your 2 sons. They didn't show him in the movie, did they?
No.
No, okay. So Moses went out to meet his father-in-law and bowed down and kissed him. They greeted each other and then went into the tent. Moses told his father-in-law about everything the Lord had done to Pharaoh and the Egyptians for Israel's sake, and about all the hardships they had met along the way, and how the Lord had saved them. Jethro was delighted to hear about all the good things the Lord had done for Israel, rescuing them from the hands of the Egyptians. He said, Praise be to the Lord, who rescued you from the hand of the Egyptians and of Pharaoh, and who rescued the people from the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all the other gods, for he did this to those who had treated Israel arrogantly. Then Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, brought a burnt offering and other sacrifices to God, and Aaron came with all the elders of Israel to eat bread with Moses' father-in-law in the presence of God.
Okay. First of all, was Jethro a Hebrew?
I don't know. I don't remember ever hearing about him.
Well, we saw the movie part where he describes who he is, even though it's not written down. But Jethro a Hebrew?
In the movie, his daughter believed in God.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
she does.
But why did Jethro know God if he wasn't a Hebrew? He told you in the movie.
I mean, they're all descendants of Abraham.
Right, they are descendants of Abraham's son Ishmael.
Okay.
You see, there is a thinking that the Hebrews and the Christians descended from Jacob, and the Muslims descended from Ishmael.
Ishmael was the son of the...
Of Abraham.
Yeah, but I mean, he was not Sarah's son, so...
Right, there was,
He's going around.
it's a complicated story, but basically that's, remember in the movie he said, I know of this God, and Moses said, well, how do you know of it? He said, Abraham is the father to many nations, which is true. The Quran mentions him as being like the progenitor.
Now, the Quran, do they believe in Jesus?
No. They mention him, but they don't,
Okay.
but the point of the matter is that there was that split there, yet Jethro knew who God was, okay? At least Cecil B. DeMille thinks so. Now, whether that, it's written that this is what happened, so basically the difference in shall we say, view of the world, supposedly dates all the way back to Abraham. Now, there was also this thing about Jacob and Esau, who separated and went their separate ways. Because, why did Jacob and Esau not like each other?
Because of the offerings, God liked one and didn't like the other.
Yeah, but there was more to it than that. There was the trickery by Jacob's mother for the birthright.
Okay.
And Esau wasn't exactly happy about that. So there were a few splits along the way, and many people point back to those as to the differences in faith here on earth today. So there was a burnt offering, and all these things happened, and there was a lot of joy and whatnot. Don't you find it interesting that they sent a messenger first and said, guess what, I'm coming? That was very common in those days.
Well, because they had so many bad people, bad people around, so maybe they always want to let you know if there's a good guy coming instead of a bad person.
So basically now Jethro and Moses are back together again. Remember, they kind of, he worked for Jethro for several years, before he was called back to Egypt. So they're pals, you know, and father and son for all practical purposes. And
He was the guy at the well, right?
no, the daughter was the
His
one.
daughter's at the well, but was he at the well too?
No, he was the one in the tent that she brings him out over to meet him.
Okay.
And he was the one that had all the daughters dancing.
All the daughters and dancing.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
But he was the priest of Midian. The movie called him a sheep, but he was like the boss. Okay. Now, these two are together. Now, like every good father-in-law, he has a life lesson. So would someone like to read Exodus 18:13-27?
I'll read it. The next day Moses took his seat to serve as judge for the people, and they stood around him from morning till evening. When his father-in-law saw all that Moses was doing for the people, he said, "What is this you are doing for the people? Why do you alone sit as judge while all these people stand around you from morning till evening?" Moses answered him, "Because the people come to me to seek God's will. Whenever they have a dispute, it is brought to me, and I decide between the parties and inform them of God's decrees and laws." Moses' father-in-law replied, "What you are doing is not good. You and these people who come to you will only wear yourselves out. The work is too heavy for you. You cannot handle it alone. Listen now to me, and I will give you some advice, and may God be with you. You must be the people's representative before God and bring their disputes to Him. Teach them the decrees and laws, and show them the way to live and the duties they are to perform. But select capable men from all the people, men who fear God, trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain, and appoint them as officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. Have them serve as judges for the people at all times, but have them bring every difficult case to you. The simple cases they can decide themselves. That will make your load lighter, because they will share it with you. If you do this, and God so commands, you will be able to stand strain, and all these people will go home satisfied." Moses listened to his father-in-law and did everything he said. He chose capable men from all Israel and made them leaders of the people, officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. They served as judges for the people at all times. Difficult cases they brought to Moses, but the simple ones they decided themselves.
Read the last one.
Then Moses sent his father-in-law on his way, and Jethro returned to his own country.
To this day, time management trainers. Have you been to time management school?
I have.
At some point, yeah.
Yeah.
I have. Yeah.
Time management trainers refer to this all the time.
Delegate.
Delegate, stop micromanaging and all
I was a
these.
supervisor. I know I heard delegate all the time,
Yeah.
constantly telling me, delegate, stop doing it yourself. It's easier just do it myself. No, delegate.
But it's excellent advice, and like I say, it's been brought up many years after. That's what father-in-laws are good for advice. I got a lot of advice from mine. So, in fact, he used to sit in his chair when he smoked a cigar, and I'd sit on the couch and he would give me advice, and most of it was good stuff. But the point of the matter is that imagine what this must have been like. How many of them were there?
62,000.
600,000. That's twice the size of Cleveland. And he's the only guy hearing disputes.
Might need some help.
Yeah. I mean, maybe Judge Judy could handle it, but I don't know about this. 600,000 people. Can you imagine how many people were in line?
And fussing about everything.
Yeah, and every little whiny thing, you
Yeah.
know, it just, look at how many judges we have in this country. And also all the cases we just throw out as being stupid before anybody hears
Well,
it.
when I was a supervisor, you know how many people just came to me for those the stupidest things? The
Yeah.
stupidest things.
Yeah.
But you had to listen, you had to, you know, make your decision and everything, but it's,
Yeah, I understand. I used to work in an HR office, and some of the grievances they got were absolutely
oh my
incredible.
gosh.
A foreman picked up a resistor off the floor and put it back in the tray, and that's supposed to be hourly unit work, and he picked it up because he didn't want anybody tripping over the damn thing, you know. But there was idle grievance anyway, and you know, so we had piles of those. But the point of the matter is, he's talking about micromanagement, and he's talking about separating things. I mean, technically they already had separations, each tribe was different. But the fact that Moses was doing all of this, and trying to lead the people, and talking to God, and trying to keep everybody in line, and on and on and on.
That's why his hair turned gray.
Yeah. He must have been like Henry Ford. No, not Henry. No, Thomas Edison. You know, Thomas Edison never slept a night in his life. He used to take power naps in his lab, an hour and a half each. You know, so he must have been doing that. So after this happens, all of a sudden now the people are organized for the first time. It's not just a rabble. Now there is different groups, and there is someone in charge of each of those groups. Also, for 600,000 people, I don't know how many judges there were, but I bet they didn't find these people in an hour. I bet it took them a while. So these folks have probably had to go through a long process and still staying where they were before they moved anywhere until they got everybody in place. And then there's always the problem when you put somebody in charge and nobody likes them and all that kind of fun thing. It's kind of like being a supervisor.
Oh, yeah. It's quite challenging is all I can say. Quite challenging.
Yeah, by the way, there's a book called Rust. It was written by Eloise Goldbach, where she worked in the steel mill that I worked in. And she didn't have a whole lot of use for supervisors either.
It's hard, because you still have a boss.
Yeah,
So you still have managers, you still have to listen to them.
yeah.
And then you have to go talk to your people and tell them, you know, and nobody ever likes anything that, you know, changes and stuff like that. I loved it, but it's a very hard job.
It is. So the point of the matter here is that this was good advice. If this hadn't happened, whoever knows how long it would have taken them. But the point of the matter is that now there is some sort of structure. I imagine Moses must have had meetings with these people to find out what's going on, and so on and so forth. And you notice the difficult cases still came to him. So he's now the Supreme Court, if you will.
Yeah.
So it actually made sense. And Jethro, a pretty smart guy. If you recall from the movie, he was a very shrewd businessman and all kinds of other things that were happening. So now, what is not clear is whether wife and two sons stayed with him or went back with the father-in-law. It doesn't say that. It says...
When they say Jethro returned to his own country, what was his country?
Midian. It was right around that area.
Oh, okay.
Because remember, they were able to see the holy mountain
Okay.
from his tent. So
Oh, yeah, I see it, okay.
that's the area where he was from.
Okay.
So basically, they went there to worship, and this allowed Jethro to come and visit him. Now, according to the movie, remember, the wife of Pharaoh sent the wife and sons on a caravan back to. I'm not so sure that ever happened, but who knows? it was good for Hollywood.
So is it the 40 years from Mount Sinai to Jericho?
Yeah. We're going to talk about that.
40 years?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that. Now, the next thing is now the Israelites are going to prepare for worship. So would somebody like to read Exodus 19, 1 to 15?
Yeah. And we end here. In the 3rd month after the Israelites left Egypt, on the very day they came to the desert of Sinai. After they set out for Rephidim,
Mm-hmm.
then entered the desert of Sinai, and Israel camped there in the desert in front of the mountain. Then Moses went up to God, and the Lord called him from the mountain and said, "This is what you are to say to the house of Jacob, and what you are to tell the people of Israel. You yourselves have seen and what I did to Egypt, and how I carried you on the eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then all of the nations, you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole world is mine, you will be a kingdom of priests and holy nation. These are the words you are to speak to the Israelites." So Moses went back and summoned the elders of the people and set before them all the words the Lord had commanded him to speak. The people all responded together, "We will do everything the Lord has said." So Moses brought their answer back to the Lord. The Lord said to Moses, "I am going to come to you in dense cloud, so that people will hear me speaking with you, and you will always put their trust in you." Then Moses told the Lord when the people had said. And the Lord said to Moses, "Go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow. Have them wash their clothes and be ready the 3rd day, because on that day the Lord will come down on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people. Put limits for the people around the mountain and tell them, 'Be careful that you do not go up the mountain or touch the foot of it. Whoever touches the mountain shall surely be put to death. All shall surely be stoned or shot with arrows. Not a hand is to be laid on him. Whether man or animal, he shall not be permitted to live. Only when the ram's horn and sounds and the long blast may they go up to the mountain.' After Moses had gone down to the mountain to the people, he consecrated them, and they washed over their clothes. Then he said to the people, 'Prepare yourselves for the 3rd day, abstain from sexual relations.'"
Where does it say they were camping?
At the foot of the mountain.
Where else?
In the desert.
Yeah, it's a desert. Don't you
So how are they
find?
gonna wash their clothes?
Exactly.
Think about it. No washing machine.
The only thing I could figure is there had to be an oasis there.
I was gonna say you got a pond or something. I don't know.
Yeah. So imagine 600,000 people washing clothes in a small area like that. The point of the matter is that, remember, Moses said several times to Pharaoh, we must go to worship on God's holy mountain in the desert. So he is fulfilling what he told Pharaoh he was going to do. Okay? Now look at what it took to get these people ready. You're talking about a 3-day period to get everybody ready. And, washing clothes and doing all these other things. And, I never did anything like that when I was camping in my life. We never washed clothes when we were camping. Well, we sort of did. What we would do is if we had dirty shirts or something, we'd wear it when we went swimming. That way it would clean the sweat out of them and everything.
I hated camping.
But the point of the matter is that they're going through an awful lot. And there's an awful lot of them. Now notice what God said about the mountain.
They couldn't touch it or anything, right?
Right.
I don't get that.
That is why the Orthodox Jewish people to this day do not believe that God could be seen or have his name spoken. Only Moses was allowed to cross that line. And everybody else was not. So it was like there was a wall there. You see what I mean? It was like an invisible wall going all the way around this mountain. And it's like, one of my favorite shows was the follow-up to the movie The Paper Chase. It was on Showtime. And Professor Kingsfield, who was played by John Houseman, he's the old, crusty, nasty first professor that you take so that he can weed out all the people who don't want to really be lawyers. And he was explaining the concept of the deadline. You know, we've all heard about deadline. Apparently in castles, there was a line that went around it. And if any prisoner crossed that line on an escape, they would not be brought back to jail, they would be killed on sight. Hence the name deadline. Well, this is a deadline.
So what do the Jewish people believe? They don't believe you can say God, you can't say the word God?
No, the name of God. So if you look at some of their websites, Yahweh is Y asterisk 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 asterisk.
I've seen that, but I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
that's why. And they do not believe that God is accessible like we do.
But that's just the Orthodox though, right?
Right. The more liberal believe differently.
Yeah.
But the point of the matter is that we Christians are not alone in that belief. You're aware of that, right?
As far as not being able to see God,
No, you can say God's name, but as far as approaching Him,
but you're supposed to have a personal relationship.
Yeah, you
so
are.
how
yeah,
can you
exactly.
not-
But if you're Catholic, you do not pray to God. Who do you pray to?
Yes, you do.
You do not pray to God. Who do you pray to?
Mary, priest.
No, the patron saint.
Yeah, but you still pray to God.
Saint of who?
Yeah, you still pray to God.
I know that, but I'm just saying, for years you prayed
Well, what they say though is they intercede, you're interceding, so that's what people don't understand. They're not really praying to them, they're supposed to go to them for advice and help and
Exactly.
then it goes to God.
Yeah,
Instead of going like, we believe like going the direct way,
Yeah,
again, I understand. They believe going to other saints and Mary to intercede for them to go to God.
exactly.
Where I think everybody's getting away from that now, though. I think everybody's now finally figuring out, you just go to God and talk to Him, and that's it. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, because every once in a while you'll hear about, I lit a candle to
Right.
Saint
but-
Christopher because I'm praying for
Right.
somebody who has cancer. Well, Saint Christopher, has a particular meaning. Saint Jude is another one.
Yeah.
The reason the hospital is known as Saint Jude is why?
Because Danny Thomas believes, right.
Well, Saint Jude is the patron saint of what?
Children?
And hopeless
Causes.
causes. So each of there's a patron saint for everything.
Yeah, there is.
Well, isn't that why some people say that in the Catholic Church you are praying to idols?
No, that's not true, though.
Well, let's put it this way. One of the reasons for the Protestant Reformation was that.
And the Pope.
Yeah, but actually, the first thing that Zwingli and his followers did was, they were meeting in cathedrals. So they would take all the statues of all the patron saints and all the other stuff that was in there and put it in the street and smash the heck out of it. So there are still, like I say, there are still sects that believe, religious sects that believe you've got to pray to someone else to intercede for you.
But I think everybody's getting away from that.
Everybody. Part of the reason is, people don't even remember what the patron saint is for what anymore.
Right, so that's why people are finally getting their act together.
And that was one of the reasons that Martin Luther was unhappy with the church. We had a pastor, Thomas Patrick Jude O'Brien. ever there,
Italian, right? Yeah. Okay.
ever there more Catholic name there never
Yeah,
was.
well, I know, I was gonna say the Irish is not.
He was going to be a priest. And the reason he dropped out of the priesthood, which he said was 10 times harder than getting in, was because of that issue.
Right. If you believe this stuff, you're supposed to believe everything.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to pick and choose, okay? Do you know what I'm saying? You know, you're not supposed to pick and choose. Like, if you believe in certain things, you're not supposed to pick and choose. You're supposed to believe everything. Well, not everybody believes everything. You know, that's just the way it is.
Well, but my point is, the seeds for that wall date back to ratings like
But I
this.
don't understand why they can't go on the mountain and why what was I just don't get the big deal about the mountain.
It doesn't say if the horn blew, then they could.
Yeah, exactly. See, God wants to commune with Moses by himself. And why? I don't know, I guess, and also Moses is taking that to mean, remember what he told his father-in-law. I'm the only one who knows the rules. Because I talk to God, the rest of these people don't. And so, there was, like I say, there was a feeling for years, centuries, that God was somebody out there, okay? And in fact, there were different, like the Gnostics and the Stoics and all those people. They believed that there were 7 layers of heaven, and it took you to get through all 7 layers before you could actually reach where God was. And I mean, so it all stems back to this. So now they're going to worship. Moses is getting ready. Now Moses is going to go up to meet God. Now remember in the movie there was all this smoke and lights and everything, and that's how we knew that God was on that mountain. Remember, Zipporah told Moses, no one's allowed to go on that
Yeah,
mountain.
wasn't there like a fog kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. So
Clouds and stuff like that.
on the morning of the 3rd day there was thunder and lightning. Where were they exactly?
We're in a desert.
In a desert. So thunder and lightning is something pretty unusual, with a thick cloud over the mountain and a very loud trumpet blast. Everyone in the camp trembled. Then Moses led the people out of the camp to meet with God, and they stood at the foot of the mountain. Mount Sinai was covered with smoke because the Lord descended on it in fire. The smoke billowed up from it like smoke from a furnace. The whole mountain trembled violently, and the sound of the trumpet grew louder and louder. Then Moses spoke, and the voice of God answered him. And the Lord descended to the top of Mount Sinai and called Moses to the top of the mountain. So Moses went up, and the Lord said to him, go down and warn the people so they do not force their way through to see the Lord, and many of them will perish. Even the priests who approach the Lord must consecrate themselves, or the Lord will break out against them. Moses said to the Lord, the people cannot come up Mount Sinai because you yourself warned us. Put limits around the mountain and set it apart as holy. The Lord replied, go down and bring Aaron up with you. But the priests and the people must not force their way through to come up to the Lord, or he will break out against them. So Moses went down to the people and told them. Again, there seems to be a wall there, doesn't it? And notice he's allowed to bring up Aaron this time.
Well, why did, in the first part we read, it sounded like the people would eventually be able to.
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah,
thought.
exactly.
Yeah.
We aren't to that point yet. So now the good stuff is about to happen, okay? Aaron is probably going to go up there. Put it this way. Why would God insist that Moses bring Aaron with him? What's a good reason?
Because of Moses' impediment, or what?
No, there's a very good reason. Imagine if you went And, he showed up in the sanctuary some Sunday morning and said, God spoke to me on Wednesday and he appeared to me and I saw him and da-da-da-da-da-da.
So you have a witness, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so you have a witness.
So now there's a witness that can attest to what is going on. And not just any witness. Remember, God decided Aaron was going to be Moses' lieutenant from the beginning.
Okay, so that's fine.
So keep that in mind as we talk about this. So here is all of the stuff is being, all the plans are being laid. Everything is there. The people are just kind of wondering what's going on. It's kind of like what we recently did with the Pope. Look at the people who were in St. Peter's Square for days waiting for an answer.
Right.
So that's where the people, they're wondering, what's God going to tell them?
Was all of this before the Ark of the Covenant?
Yes. Okay. So point of the matter is that, all of this is building to something. And it's a little late right now, but next time we're going to find out that this is where the Ten Commandments originally come into play. Okay? They probably had to use Aaron because somebody had to write this stuff down.
Now, do the Jewish people believe in the Ten Commandments?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
That is the basis of the law of Moses.
Okay.
And we're going to find out next week that there not only was the Ten Commandments involved, but there were a whole lot of other laws that were communicated that day.
That's always right.
And that's why when you remember the scribes and the Pharisees, their whole lives were dedicated to knowing all the laws and understanding all the laws and obeying all the laws themselves and making sure everybody else does and humiliating people that don't. And stop and think, most of the people didn't have the foggiest idea what all the laws of Moses were. There were too many of them. And then the scribes would take a law of Moses and they would translate it and make it relevant. And so one sentence would end up 4 volumes as to what that exactly meant. For example, one of the Ten Commandments says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Okay, that seems simple enough, doesn't it? By the time the scribes were done with it, they had defined what you could and could not do on the Sabbath. There was even rules about if somebody got injured or something, there was rules about how much you could do on the Sabbath. And there was also rules about how far you could walk. And somehow if you walked to a friend's house or a certain person's house, you got extra distance. And there was, just imagine having to know all this stuff. And the scribes, as I said, they spent their whole lives studying this. And it took 20 to 30 years to become a scribe. 20 to 30 years because they had to memorize all this stuff. So keep in mind that there is this, God is building this issue of, I am God, you are the people, I am your, shall I say, guiding light, if you will. I am your overseer, I am your protector, I am everything to you. And I expect that you are going to give me the respect I deserve in return. So stop and think about what that means. The respect in return. Why do you think they had to wash their clothes? Why do you think they had to abstain from certain things? Why? Because that's respect. So that's where all of this stuff builds from. And remember that this is the law, this is part of the law of Moses that every Jewish person is supposed to know. And that's where they believe it comes from. Because remember, the Torah is the first 5 books of the Old Testament, give or take a few words. So keep that in mind as we go forward here. The relationship between God and God's people for that time is being built right now. Okay? It's being built. Before that, when they were in Egypt, they assumed that they were told that a deliverer would come, and basically they waited for this deliverer and didn't do a whole lot else. But now that the deliverer is there and they're on their way, they are being taught that there are certain things, there are certain rules for life, and you're all going to understand them, and you're all going to be able to tell your children about them, and so on and so on and so on. Okay? Now next week we're also going to talk about the distance again. Keep in mind that the first sentence that we read in that one part of Exodus said that where is it? 19. In the 3rd month after the Israelites left Egypt, on the very day they came to the desert of Sinai, which is right by the mountain there. So in 3 months they went that whole length. Okay, 3 months. Now you're going to find out it takes them quite a bit longer to get to where they want to go. And you'll find out why. Could you imagine?
No, I cannot.
You start the journey when you're 20. Okay? By the time you're 65, you get to where you want to go.